Welcome to Horror Stories Fanatics. If you enjoy this type of content, then subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on any of our latest and greatest uploads. The heartbeat quickens, muscles tense, and the stomach churns, all telltale signs of fear. For some, fear is an unpleasant experience they avoid at all costs, but many others revel in the adrenaline rush of a good scare. They dash off to catch the latest horror flick, or gleefully enter a haunted house to be terrorized at Halloween. So, why might we subject ourselves to these frightful ordeals? The answer lies within both the mind and the body. Why we like to be scared. Being petrified can be exhilarating and addictive. We like novelty, something that departs from our everyday experience. Some of the attraction of being scared comes from the deviation of having a new experience that we know is safe. A flood of fear paired with the relief of safety can release naturally occurring opioids like endorphins that signal pleasure, along with a hit of dopamine, a chemical linked to the brain's reward center. Young children can get especially excited because they don't yet grasp that a haunted attraction or a creepy movie are just make-believe. Your amygdala will give you a fear response, an avoidance response to stay away from something that is legitimately frightful. So, for a child, going to one of these haunted houses could be truly scary. That might explain why slasher films and scary stories are primarily geared toward people in their late teens and early 20s. The transition to adulthood is an interesting phase of life in which people are establishing their belief system. They are away from their parents and are often trying to test themselves to figure out what scares them. Life lessons lurk in ghost and monster tales. Fear-inducing tales were useful in early societies as a way to teach children about natural predators like bears and wolves. But as people started to ponder the meaning of life and death, their stories began to reflect that self-recognition and struggle with inner demons. The monsters are us, in a sense. They are that very dangerous part of us, and it's good to recognize and be afraid of those evil parts of yourself. A good example of ethical guidance embedded in a scary story can be found in the Latin American tale of La Llorona, the spirit of a mother who drowned her children in a fit of jealous rage. La Llorona wails as she regretfully searches for their bodies, bringing misfortune to those who hear her cries. La Llorona subverts the societal norm of mothers as loving and protective, becoming a cautionary lesson for others to consider when they get angry with their children. Scary stories can reflect a culture's hidden demons. Stories of ghosts are prevalent in most societies and often carry cultural implications. In the United States, they feature prominently in connection with slavery and the mistreatment of native tribes, like the trope of the American Indian burial ground as an explanation for supernatural events. We like to think of ourselves as a good society in America, and yet we're aware of these horrible things that happened. They are still haunting us in a metaphorical sense. Folklore about monsters is also useful when tracking the influence of cultures. As people spread across the globe, zombies are part of West African traditions. Vampires have been traced back to Eastern Europe, and genii likely originated in the Arabic world. There's an interesting role these monsters play in shaping our cultures. People are constantly reinventing these monster stories to talk about what they fear and are haunted by. Newer themes often deal with science, particularly the potential for technology to turn against its creator. Evil robots and smart devices that turn malevolent abound, like the computer HAL in 2001, A Space Odyssey. Another type is the rise of internet monsters like Slender Man, an abnormally tall humanoid that stalks and abducts children online. When these new monsters come up, that shows you that people aren't too sure about some of this new technology, that maybe there is something to be frightened about. Cinema offers a window into society's collective fears. Similar trends can be seen in recent films. Modern-day thrillers often reflect fears over technological and biological experimentation, such as the accidental release of a man-made contagion in 28 Days Later. Horror, as a genre, is an expression of the collective anxieties of a society at the time in which these films are made. They allow us to collectively get a sense of catharsis by the vanquishing of these fears. Just think of Godzilla, the classic 1954 sci-fi film featuring a dinosaur-like monster created by nuclear radiation. It's a thinly veiled representation of a shared anxiety in Japan about the lingering effects of the atomic attacks during World War II. You've got this nuclear monster that's a stand-in for the bomb that rampages through a city like Tokyo. It's only by defeating Godzilla that you achieve that collective catharsis. Other films, in the vein of Halloween and its many knockoffs and sequels, like the Friday the 13th series, tapped into growing fears in the 1980s of random acts of violence and the emergence of the serial killer in the public consciousness. Zombie films are another illustration of this point. A zombie movie might represent concerns about the atomic age, as in Night of the Living Dead, fear of supernatural religious forces, like in The Serpent and the Rainbow, or a critique of mass consumerism, as in Dawn of the Dead. Conquering the fear of death is at the core of all horror films. It's the way in which that problem is presented by the film that speaks to the specifics of the society at any given time. If you like scary stories, here are 5 of the scariest stories ever told. But be warned, if you are too afraid, then end the video here if you don't want nightmares. Number 1. The Ghosts of the Crescent Hotel, Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Spend the night in the haunted Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, which opened in 1886. During construction, a worker named Michael was killed, and his ghost reportedly still haunts room 218. The hotel came under the ownership of known medical fraud Norman Baker in 1937. Who fancied himself a doctor. He turned the hotel into the Baker Cancer Hospital, claiming to have the cure for the disease. He did not, obviously. Patients who died under his care were buried right in the hotel's basement, which served as a makeshift morgue. He was arrested in 1940, but his patients' spirits are said to still remain because the hotel is still open. Guests often say they see apparitions and hear noises during their stays. Sci-fi's Ghost Hunters even has footage of something moving in the basement. Number 2. Huggin' Molly, Abbeville, Alabama. It's best to stay home when the sun sets in Abbeville, Alabama, if you want to avoid Huggin' Molly's chilly embrace. As the legend goes, beginning in the early 1900s, an oversized figure clad in all black began roaming the streets at night, looking for unsuspecting victims. Once she fixates on someone, she hugs the person and screams loudly into their ears. Many people have recounted stories of being chased by what they believe was Huggin' Molly. Local parents have even taken advantage of the story to keep their children in line. The town embraces its nighttime warden, proudly calling itself the home of Huggin' Molly. There's even a family-friendly restaurant named after her. Number 3. The Surency House Ghost, Surency, Georgia. The Surency clan began experiencing paranormal activities in present-day Surency, Georgia in the 1870s. Family members reported witnessing objects soaring across rooms, hearing laughter and crying, and seeing red eyes staring into the house. Food was thrown from their plates and utensils twisted into unusable shapes. The townspeople speculated that these occurrences were cries for help from spirits who thought the family would be able to save them. On the day the family decided to finally leave the house, a fire iron allegedly floated up and started hitting one of the sons on the head. No one was ever brave enough to live in the house again, and the building went up in flames in 1925. Number 4. The Ghost of Bellamy Bridge, Marianna, Florida. For a taste of true haunting love, travel over this spooky bridge in Marianna, Florida, which has several ghost legends surrounding the structure. In the 1830s, Elizabeth Jane Croom Bellamy married local politician Dr. Samuel C. Bellamy. On their wedding night, her dress accidentally caught on fire, which covered the young bride in horrible burns. She initially survived, but eventually passed away. Elizabeth was buried along the banks of the Chipola River, and it was said that her love for her husband was so strong she couldn't rest. The deceased newlywed, dressed in white, can allegedly be seen wandering the banks from the vantage point of the bridge, which was built after she died. It's said that she appears on fire, either walking through the swamps or diving straight into the river as if to douse the flames, or somberly walking along the side of the river. Number 5. The Ghost of Deer Island, Biloxi, Mississippi. Back on May 20th, 1922, Anthony Ragusan, aka Mr. Tony, relayed this tale in a column in the Sun Herald. He writes that in the early 1800s, 2 fishermen spent the night on Deer Island off Biloxi's coast. They heard noises that they ignored until it became impossible to do so. When they went to see what was causing the ruckus, they claimed they found a headless skeleton that ran after the pair. They immediately made a beeline for their boat and got off the island immediately. It's said that the bony frame belongs to a pirate who had his head chopped off by his captain, and his body was left behind as a ghastly guard to watch over buried treasure. And with that, we've reached the end of this video, all about why ghosts are scary. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content just like this.